This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Good old Burton Cummings and the Guess Who, Clap for the Wolfman. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, UK High Definition Radio, Euro High Definition Radio, Star Cable. We're available on, Boxy. We're available on Roku. We're available on Apple TV and Sony TV, and we're just getting bigger and stronger each and every day. TV starts next month, X-Zone Nation. We're going to be going back live Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m., I believe. Mind you, there's talk about putting us from midnight until 4. There's talk about putting us from 8 at night to midnight. We just have to roll with the punches. Well, there goes my daytime sleep. Okay. X-Zone Nation, Brian David Andersen is my special guest this hour, a good friend of the X-Zone Nation. He is the gentleman behind Tri-Vortex. And this hour, we're going to be talking about many things with Brian. First of all, Brian, welcome back to the X-Zone. Always great having you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate to be here.
You're a gentleman who has his fingers on the pulse of the world. And I'm just looking at the stock market for today. It's all in the red. Everything from Apple is down, Google is down, Yahoo is down, the Dow Jones is nearly down 300 points. The FTSE is down. The HSI is down 154 points. The German stock market is down 204 points. What's going on, Brian?
Well, it's the whole financial area. We have been dealing with this for 500 years, and we're getting a culmination of this now, what is called either fractionalized or it's also called fractional banking system. And that basically is that I have one chicken in my bank, but then I loan out that I actually have 10 chickens. But then when everybody wants to have their chicken, I only have one. And it's the fractal system is not illegal. It should be. It should be declared illegal 300 or 400 years ago. But it's very corrupt. So it's still legal, but extremely corrupt type of system.
Now, isn't this something like a pyramid scheme?
Oh, that's what it always has been. And what it always then depends upon is that there's always going to be some economy somewhere in the world's crashing. Or also what it really supports is war, is because, again, you have somebody that's always falling out. Somebody's either way up or somebody's way down, rather than everybody being equal and everybody paying their own bills, doing their own currencies, that type of thing, which would be the most logical. And it, again, is a fraught with corruption and also support of your military-industrial complex.
So, in plain English, peacetime is bad for the economy. Wartime
under
great.
that fractal banking system, yes.
Unbelievable.
It's also, too, is that when the United States invaded Iraq, our dear Mr. Bush said that the war would pay for itself, And nobody understood what he was saying, and I didn't either. And it wasn't until last year that I understood of what he was talking about. When we invaded Kuwait and Iraq during those times, they then crashed the Kuwait dollar. And then a bunch of people in the United States themselves invested into the Kuwaiti dollar. And what happened is that dollar was so very low, then when they revalued that Kuwaiti dollar, the United States was invested. And then all of a sudden you heard during the Clinton administration that we had a balanced budget. And I never understood. I remember this way back in the mid-1990s, that all of a sudden the United States was now had a surplus. They were now at a balanced budget, and they never really explained why. Well, what happened is when they revalued
why don't we just have a bit of a cliffhanger here, because I've got to take my 2-minute commercial break. Brian David Anderson is with us. www.trivortex.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
And welcome back, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. This is The Exome. Brian David Anderson is our special guest. www.trivortex.com. Sorry I had to cut you off during the just before the commercial break, pal. But so if we could just get back to what we were talking about so we can better understand what really happened. Bush brought us into... Bush number one brought us into the war. Clinton says a couple of years later that, the budget is balanced and there's extra money in the coffers.
Which means it was all derived from when they revalued the Kuwaiti dollar. The Kuwaiti dollar was worth like less than a penny, and then all of a sudden it went up to like $3 or $4. And because of that, then the United States was heavily invested, and there was literally billions of dollars that the United States earned off this. They have now done the same exact thing that they did with Kuwait, they did with Iraq, and that's when Bush Jr. came along and said, well, it's going to pay for itself. Well, they did the same thing where they crashed the Iraqi dollar, and now this is the big thing. They call it the Iraqi dinar, which is what our dollar is called, the dinar. And it's a big movement. I don't know how much you have in Canada, but in the United States, there's lots of people now that are invested into the Iraqi dinar. There was veterans that were coming back from the Iraq War, and they understood about the currency of the dinar being devalued to this really ridiculous low sum. Now they're talking about bringing it back up to either its value before the war or even higher. And for those persons, if you do like $1,000 investment, if it comes back to its value before the war started, you could earn $800,000.
So what we're talking about is something like insider trading.
Well, yeah, it's somewhat that way that they're going to revalue. So there's now a whole lot of people that are invested in the Iraqi dinar, including myself. I did a little bit, not a whole lot. I just I saw something that possibly would be there, but now there's been two events that have occurred that now I believe the whole dinar thing is not going to happen. And that's, first off, is all of these Wall Street now protests. They have gone back in and they've been doing some investigating, and they're finding out the organizations that are supporting this whole Wall Street movement. This is not just something that is a happenstance type of thing. This is a very coordinated type of thing, and it goes back to numerous foundations and that type of thing. These people that are protesters are having gourmet food served to them, vegetarian type food. They've gone into the tent cities, and they found out at night nobody's in the tents. They all went back home. So it's somewhat of a facade. It goes back to the whole dialect that you're saying, that if you want true power, you want to control the problem and the solution. Mm-hmm. So there's basically, they have now these protesters all over, which is very, very coordinated. That's when you got to watch out, because when it's coordinated, that means there's something behind it. The next thing now has occurred, and also now we bring ourselves back to what you were bringing up about the stock market all going down, 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 is the Vatican call for a central world bank. And of course, there's many people in contention. I believe it also is that basically all your control of your banks all go back to the Jesuits in the Vatican. When you start taking everything back, they've been controlling it for years. They are the ones that came up with the fractal banking system. They invented it. And so basically now, which is this call of the Central World Bank, I don't think that the Iraqi dinar is going to revalue, because if that happens, that will immediately pull the United States out of debt. Just by simply the taxes being paid by the people who are invested in the dinar, that will pay for the budget for probably another 5 or 6 years and go plus. So they're not going to let that happen. I believe that the whole stock market type of thing, they're all wanting to go now towards the Central World Bank. The reason being is they've leapfrogged. If you remember, we've talked about this on the program many times about the Amero, where they were going to bring in Mexico, the United States, and Canada all into one currency. And they were also going to have these roads going from Mexico directly all the way to Toronto and all, and superhighways. Well, those all have now fallen apart. Texas now came back, did legislation to totally nix the entire corridor going from Mexico to Canada. Now you also, the Amero, people start waking up, and there's no such thing as an Amero. It's not even being talked about anymore. So now they're wanting to leapfrog. They do not want to have this type of currency, or because they didn't get their currency with the Amero, and they were going to have it was going to be a rival to the euro. That didn't happen here, and so now they're trying to leapfrog over from what they wanted, that step of the Amero, and go directly right now to a central world bank. And to do that, regretfully, what they're going to have to do is crash the American economy. I don't see any other way to have that central world bank. From all the analysis that I've looked at and listened to a lot of people, is that they have to do a crashing, or at least a partial crashing, of the American economy. And that's why we're not going to see the dinar revalue, and we're going to keep seeing all of these protests. And again, they're all focused on Wall Street. And who owns Wall Street? The banks own the Wall Street. Who owns the banks? Well, if you go back, as I said, go back to everything, it goes back to the Jesuits and the Vatican. So they're doing a little bit of diversionary type of thing here, is that they're focused on this Wall Street when they should be actually, at the very least, they should be going after the Federal Reserve Bank here in the United States. I was thinking about this today now. What is the equal in Canada? Is there a Federal Reserve type of thing in Canada?
Here in Canada, we have the Bank of Canada. It's called the Bank of Canada. And it is responsible for the currency. It's under federal jurisdiction. It's not a private entity like the
Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, and that's probably why also the Canadian dollar stays very strong. So, again, the protesters are they've been used, they've been manipulated. However, your higher echelons, I believe that again they're basically working for the bankers. Because again, if they were really truly wanting to protest, they should go towards the source and not the symptom. The Wall Street is a symptom of the problem, and that's what they want. They do not want people to look at actually the real solutions to the problem. So that's a long answer to your thing about the stock market. That's my research. That's my opinion.
What effect did the overthrow of Libya have on the world economy and the alleged assassination of Omar Gaddafi?
Yeah, I don't think he was assassinated. That was crazy. I mean, he was probably as much assassinated as Hussein. Both of them are probably off in some sort of beach someplace right now because they played a role. He basically, I believe, over the years, he was installed by the West. He played the bad guy for 42 years. And then when he no longer had any more bad guy type of thing, then they moved him out. Although he could have done, one thing he might have been pushing for is that, see, they also wanted, they had their dinar also, the Libya dinar, and he wanted to make it gold. He wanted to have it be gold backed. And that would not fit into all. That would just wreck a lot of things as far as the Central World Bank. If Libya had gone forward with their dinar plans that they were doing, the Central World Bank, promoted now by the Vatican, could not have happened. So it was also a lot for if in fact Gaddafi was promoting this gold-backed dinar, and he still was under their puppet, but he had this kind of like idea, and maybe put people around him to try to make Libya the central of Africa and currency. That wasn't going to fly. So that was also why then they needed to get rid of him as much as possible. But I think over the years, though, he was installed by the West. He's played the bad guy for the West. And now I do not believe at all that he is dead. That, again, this is poor science. We do not have any type of body. We don't have any type of DNA. We have nothing to proof that he actually did die.
Are you talking about Gaddafi or
yeah, Gaddafi, and also Hussein too. We never didn't have that much of proof on him also.
Well, wasn't Gaddafi's body displayed in a meat shop?
Again, which body though? And basically, it was so brutalized, from what I understand, that you really couldn't almost recognize it. So it was interesting is that they found Hussein hiding in some sort of ditch. They then came along and said the same thing about Gaddafi, that he was hiding in some sort of pipe when they pulled him out of a pipe. And so it's like they're trying to say something to us here about their little fake stories that they do. But I do not believe for one moment that Gaddafi is dead. I think he was absconded away with. There was probably a double that was put in his way as far as the body, and they're taking care of his 42 years of service that he did to the West.
So do you think that this is all part of the New World Order's play to gain global control and power?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's not anything that's not happening right now, especially in the Middle East, that doesn't have to do with your New World Order trying to, again, then what is the New World Order? The New World Order, its epitome is having this Central World Bank, because then you're going to have literally control over everything with this Central World Bank. And that's what the Vatican is now big time promoting.
All right, so what good is the world economy to the one world order if the entire economy is taking a dump?
Well, then that gives an excuse then that the Central World Bank can play the part of the savior. So I'll tell you what, now you got dollars. We'll tell you what, we'll give you 10 cents on the dollar. Now you have a choice. Your dollar's not worth diddly, or we'll give you 10 cents for all you Americans. Now you can come in and have our currency, but we'll give you 10 cents on the dollar, which means that's going to wipe out. We're going to be a poverty type of class after that. And but again, then they have the control. They have the and it doesn't matter to the top echelon who gets in the way, how many people are going to get hurt. It doesn't matter as long as they have their central New World Order. They could care less of how many people are going to suffer from it. In the end, what they want is that control.
All right, Brian, stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Brian David Andersen is our guest, www.trivortex.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. We'll be back after this news break. Don't go away.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Brian David Andersen is our special guest. Brian is the person behind trivortex.com. And Brian joins us on a regular basis here in the X-Zone. And Brian, we received an email from you about Ruth Paine. What's the story behind Ruth Paine?
Well, first off, for those persons that are probably under 40, or especially under 30, of who was Ruth Paine.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a cast of characters, and they start first off with Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the accused assassin of John Fitzgerald Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963. And he had all sorts of Russian connections. He had a Russian-born wife by the name of Marina. He then also had contact with a very shady character named George de Mohrenschildt, who was also Russian. A very bizarre situation about this George de Mohrenschildt. He lived in Dallas, was part of all these intelligence type of operations.
Mm-hmm.
But also one of the key things is that another bizarre thing is that this George de Mohrenschildt dated Jackie Kennedy's mother, and also dated Jackie Kennedy's aunt. And now he has connections with Lee Harvey Oswald. And he also then had connections with a Russian-speaking, fluent Russian-speaking Ruth Paine. She lived in Irving, Texas. And George de Mohrenschildt then arranged for Lee Harvey Oswald and his wife, Marina, to live with the Paines. And basically there was Michael Paine also, but when they were living together, when the Oswalds were living with the Paines were separated, and he was living in Grand Prairie and she was living in Irving. So those are the cast of characters so far. What's interesting also is that there is the thing called the Zapruder film. It was Abraham Zapruder took a film supposedly of the whole incident on Elm Street,
Right.
26 seconds. And interesting enough is that George de Mohrenschildt, he was then married to a woman by the name of Jeannie Lagone in Dallas. She was part of the fashion industry in Dallas. And Zapruder was a dressmaker and knew her for many years. And so Zapruder was also Russian. He was from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he was belonged to several other organizations that de Mohrenschildt also belonged to. So now we have all this Russian connection.
Wow.
With the incident on Elm Street. And so we now have all the players. Now, the how I start off with is then now the incident takes place. They then capture Oswald in the theater. They find out that he's living part-time in Irving. He's also living part-time in Oak Cliff.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dallas police head out to Ruth Paine's residence. And Ruth is there. It's now 3 o'clock in the afternoon. and so is Marina Oswald. Well, Marina talks very little English, and so they came in and said, do you know if your husband owned a rifle and where he kept it? And she then interpreted in Russian, and at first Marina said, no, I don't know anything about it. Then there was a little consultation by Ruth Payne, who was speaking Russian, and Marina, and then all of a sudden Marina changes her mind and says, oh, yeah, in the garage. And so after being coached by Ruth Payne, they go into the garage and they find a blanket, but they don't find a rifle, but it looks like where a rifle could be.
Mm-hmm.
So they then packed up the blanket, and Marina Oswald and Ruth Payne, they all go to the Dallas Police Department. So now that they release them, let them go, and now we have a whole other sequence of events. One of the things is that I would like to, if I had the opportunity, if there would be one thing that I could say, and I have an interview with Marina Oswald, I would ask her one question.
What's that, Brian?
And I would pay her $500 to answer the question correctly, because now she charges $5,000 for an interview. That's what Marina charges now these days. And so, but I'd pay her just $500 for just one question, and that is, was Ruth Payne physically in the house between November 22nd, on November 22nd, between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m.? And it's my contention is that if she answered that question honestly, no, that the answer would be a definite no, that Ruth Payne was not in the house. Because Ruth Payne drove a green Rambler station wagon. It was very distinctive. It was 1960 Rambler station wagon with a rack on top and a very distinctive type of car. After the incident had occurred, Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig was going down Elm Street, and he saw this green Rambler station wagon. It stopped. He heard a whistle coming out of the car. Then this man runs down the grassy knoll and hops in the car. And he now is almost like across the street, and he can't get across the street, and he's sprinting at them. Roger Craig is sprinting to try to get to them. But he identifies this person going down the grassy knoll as Lee Harvey Oswald, or an Oswald character. Let's put it that way. And so he sees this Oswald character, or Oswald himself, running down, gets in the green Rambler station wagon, which is identical. He said when he saw a picture of Ruth Payne's car, he said, that was the car I saw. So was she also involved in the whole incident also on Elm Street? Was she there with Des Moines Child when the whole thing was going down? Then the other question being is, when she picked this Oswald character up, where did she take him? And my contention is she probably took him to the Texas Theater, didn't even take him to the streets, took him directly to the Texas Theater, dropped him off, and then he was then the patsy. He was picked up. The person who actually killed the Tippett, the officer, was probably not Oswald at all whatsoever. But they dropped off their patsy at the Texas Theater, and voila, now we have the rest is history. And that's what began basically Oswald, when he was in custody, was saying, I'm a patsy. I don't know anything about this thing about shooting the officer. I know nothing about shooting, the JFK. He was just like going, I'm the patsy here. I wish people would come forward and clear my name. And so, again, we have the tremendous involvement of Ruth Payne. So then about 2 years ago, I was talking with a friend of mine who I've known since I was 13 years old. We went to junior high school together. And she was saying, I knew her father since I was the age of 13. And his name was Arden J. Phillips, or we call him A.J. Phillips. He guarded the Payne home on Saturday and Sunday. And she said there was some really wild stuff going on. She said, I've never gotten the full story from my father. He will not talk about it with a lot of people. And I said, well, what about if I try to call him up? She said, well, you can go ahead. So I got his telephone number. AJ is now 83, 84 years old. So I said, Jay, he's known me for years. And I said, all I want to do is just get to the truth. All I want is just tell me what happened. And he was kind of like a pause there, and he says, I guess somebody, people really need to know this. So he started talking about all the events that had occurred, and it's mind-boggling of what occurred. Red, we call him Red because he had red hair, and we call Red and AJ, and he was in World War II. He was part of the underwater demolition team. Then he was a rescue diver for the Dallas area. He then became a reserve police officer for the Irving Police Force, and he also worked full-time as a mechanic for American Airlines. So we're talking about a really stable, we're talking, really hardened type of individual who went through World War II. He's been through all sorts of situations, and knows how to put things of detail and that type of thing. And during the conversation, he was telling me, he said, I've been through all these things. I've been a reserve police officer. I've been through World War II. He said, but I've never had anything as stressful as what occurred on those 2 days that I was guarding this house. And because again, now they're on this duty, and they catch these two, or they catch a hot rod full of teenagers, and they are kind of looking suspicious. So they open up the trunk of the car, and they find a bunch of rifles in the trunk. And they say, we're going target range shooting. And they, but Jay was going, well, the target range is going that way, and you're going that way. And he said, you may be doing target shooting, but not today. And so they hauled them off to the police station. Now, about the same time as when, on Sunday, Lee Harvey Oswald is shot. And also, if you want to get the really full details on this, if you go over to MyGod, MYGOD, so the website address is MYGOD, MyGod, and then the letter I and the letter M, and then HIT, HIT, MyGodI'mHit.com. And you scroll down and you'll see Ruth Payne, the Trenchcoat Man, and the house fire, and have all the full details of all of this. And I decided to go ahead on this 48th. We're coming up on the 48th anniversary to release all this. So now I have this conversation with Jay Phillips. I go home this past September. I go home for my 40-year high school reunion. And one of my high school buddies, again, somebody I've known since I was 13 years old, he reads and sees the information on the My God I'm Hit website. He said, I really got to talk to you. He said, I have some information for you. He said, but I don't want to do it. I'll wait till we get to the reunion. So what he tells me is that Ruth Payne lived on West 5th Street. Oddly enough, that's also where my family home also was. We lived approximately 3/4 of miles away we lived at the 1500 block of West 5th Street, and the Paynes lived at the 2500 block of West 5th Street. And so they moved, then in 1964, a year, less than a year, almost months afterwards, Ruth Payne moves to a house, which is an upper middle class type of house. The West 5th Street house was considered more of lower middle class. It was built in the 1940s, and here she moves almost to a brand new home built in the 1960s in a very short period of time. And she's now living across the street from my friend that I went to junior high school with, and I didn't know anything about this. And so and now when I started doing my investigating, and I went through the Dallas County records, and I found out that not only did Ruth Payne buy that home, but she bought two others right next door. It was lots 3, 4, and 5 on Woodley Avenue. So here she goes from having one lower middle class home, all of a sudden she's bought 3 in less than 6 months after the incident on Elm Street. And this now also ties into a whole type of thing going on with money. It also has to do with what a character is known as the Trenchcoat Man. And basically, to give her the Reader's Digest version of this, Jay Phillips and another officer are sent inside the Payne home. Marina Oswald is there, and they settle everything down, and then Jay looks over and he sees this man in a trench coat tippy-toeing towards Marina's bedroom, And they then, it's like they draw their guns and they go charging after this guy. They knock him on the floor. He's screaming at the top of his lungs as they start approaching him. And after they grab him, he's screaming at the top of his lungs, "Life magazine." And then on chorus, Ruth Payne comes out and starts pounding on the officers and said, "He's a reporter. He's a reporter." And so, and then Jay goes, "So who lets you in?" And says he asked the guy, "Who lets you in?" And Payne goes, and Ruth, before he could answer, Ruth says, "I did. I let him in the back door." And he goes, "Lady, you and the kids and Mrs. Oswald are supposed to be the only ones supposed to be here." And she goes, "This is my house. I can do what I want." Now, keep in mind, though, is that on the afternoon of the 22nd, when the Dallas police arrive at her doorstep on West 5th Street, Ruth Payne and her husband had 2 children. One was born in 1959, and the other was born in 1961. The 2 kids are not anywhere around. They weren't anywhere around Friday afternoon. That whole weekend, they weren't there. So how did Ruth know to have her children taken away when all this chaos would be happening in her house? That was always to me unusual.
All right, you and I have to take our final break, buddy. As always, great talking to you. Very interesting stuff, and thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us, Brian. Exonation, Brian David Andersen is our guest, www.trivortex.com, and we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A Soul Balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Well, that'll bring it back to the 1970s in a hurry. Lou Rawls with Lady Love. Geez, I remember when I got that song. It was on one of the old K-Tel albums that had all these different songs comprised on it. You could actually go to your record store. Remember those guys? Record stores, you bought vinyl. Yeah, we saw the end of that coming as soon as the next innovation. Remember the 8-tracks? Yeah, and then it went to cassette, and then CDs, and now digital. Bang, away you go. Brian David Andersen's with us, www.trivortex.com. Brian, so where, in your opinion, because I know you've done a lot of investigation into the JFK, assassination, where does Ruth Payne fall in? Was she part of the CIA? Was she part of the cover-up? Was she part of the conspiracy?
I think she was part of the conspiracy. I think when you go back to her background also, have some of that up on the website, that her relatives, parents, had intelligence operation connections.
And what, again, I'll repeat again one more time. It's MyGod, MYGOD, I'm hit. That's IMHIT.com. And the whole full article, even if you're not a JFK fan, what this really proves is that there was a conspiracy. And this is an indirect way, because a lot of the information that's in there is an indirect way that, yes, there was people involved in all of this and the whole plot. And I believe that she was there assisting probably Dee Mohrenchild on Elm Street. She was there, and she actually took Lee Harvey Oswald, or that character, over to the Texas Theater. She was an assistant there, and then she had plenty of time to make it back to Irving. She waited for him. Then all the negative comments that she made about Oswald to the Warren Commission, that was all purposeful. Then this whole incident that occurred on Sunday evening has remained buried because everybody remained quiet. All the police officers who were involved in this incident were never called to the Warren Commission, and so everything was covered up. The Ruth Payne, Marina Oswald, District Attorney Henry Wade, the FBI, Warren Commission, and Life magazine all covered up this whole incident that occurred on Sunday night. And the only reason why it's now coming to light is because of my interview with A.J. Phillips. If I had not interviewed him, this whole story probably would have remained buried.
How crucial is this story to the big puzzle?
Oh, I think it really fits in, because then this is a side type of piece, but when you plug Ruth into the whole thing, especially with Ruth, her station wagon being seen on Elm Street, then it plugs in, it kind of all goes in, and then you have all these totally lies and false statements made by Ruth Payne. Now, I've got her dead to right as far as being a major, major lying that she did to the Warren Commission. It's right there in black and white in the article on the website.
Listen, we've got just a few seconds left. Do you think that this could be the smoking gun to the JFK assassination?
I believe it is.
All right, Brian, you and I...
those things that could trip it.
All right, you and I will be back talking about the JFK assassination. This is November. We always have you on at that time. Brian, I want to thank you so much. Always great talking to you. Take care of yourself, my friend, and keep the great work up. Brian David Andersen, www.trivortex.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X Zone continues, right here, live and around the world from our studios in beautiful Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. My name is Rob McConnell. I'll be back after the news. Don't go away.